Hi guys, welcome to the episode of the course. In this video, we're going to learn creative writing. This is another fun, difficult, but fun kind of writing. When we're in primary school, while you were growing up, or at the very early stage of your life, there is this part of our English lessons where we have to write an essay, write a short story, write a letter, you know, something like that in class and even during exams. And there is also literature in English classes where you read stories and then they ask you to summarize what you learned or summarize what you've read, stuff like that. Well, the good news is it's not completely useless because there are thousands of people in the world that are feeding based on creative writing, that particular kind of writing, the essay kind of writing. Thousands, if not millions, of people in the world. So in this video, I'm going to talk about it in details, how to get into it, what to keep in mind, the different kinds of writing, as you can already see on the screen. So let's get started. Now, creative writing harnesses your imaginative skills more than that. It depends on your ability to create an entire world. I'm talking humans, places, animals, aliens, anything, absolutely anything at all, and give it life with the right words. I mean, we've read stories. Let's see. Okay, there is this popular um folklore, or yeah, folklore. I think that's the right word. The tortoise story. I don't think there is any Nigerian or even African adult that did not go through the tortoise, the tales of the tortoise, things it did, and some other many stories like that. At this age, there is a part of your brain that knows that those stories are not real, right? Like it's not possible. Tortoises do not talk, they are not deceptive, they're just slow animals that exist for hundreds of years and, well, die when they're done. But regardless of that logic, you won't forget those stories. You can't forget tortoise winning a race against a hare or a rabbit, that very fast animal. You can't forget the story of the tortoise conning the doll. You can't forget those stories because, well, that's what they are. They're stories, and the stories they stick to the brain, they are memorable, and they have this thing where they just capture, like, take hold of your brain. And even when you know this thing is not possible, you still believe and invest so much energy into that story. That's what creative writing is. And yes, there is money, there is a career, there is a life in creative writing. Um, all right. I said some would argue that it's the toughest kind of writing. It is actually if you intend to make something out of it. Because yeah, it is flexible. You can pretty much do anything, like invent anything, create the weirdest kind of animals and or creatures and put them in a book. But it takes research, it takes imagination to actually structure your words, structure your world, that world that you're creating, such that even when we know that it's a lie, we still believe you. I mean, come on, you watch Marvel movies, all the superheroes, we know that it's a lie, but we believe so much in those stories that we even argue about it. We buy stuff to reflect the superheroes that we believe in. Do you get? So it takes a lot of research to go into that. Takes a lot of, I mean, takes a lot of work to do that. So yes, it can be the toughest kind of writing. The goal of any creative writing is to have an emotional and intellectual impact on the audience. So you're not trying to get anybody to take an action. At least 90% of the time, you're not trying to get an action out of anybody, like click this link. No, you're not trying to do that. You're just trying to make them remember you. That's it. That's all. Maybe there is a lesson in it. Not all stories have lessons, right? But there could be a lesson in it. But regardless of whether there is a lesson or not, your main goal is to make your audience remember you. Remember you doesn't have to be you as the author. I mean, of course, it would be nice if they remembered your name. There are so many amazing stories that I've read. I don't know who the authors are, but when I see that story, I'm going to remember that, oh, this is a good one. So that is the goal of your creative writing, to have an emotional connection with the audience, such that they believe so much in your work that if, for instance, you decide to, let's say we're talking about a novel now, for instance, and you decide to create a part two, part three, they would be willing to bring out their purses and pay just to read what you came up with for your part two. Now, some of the common outputs of creative and script writing are novels and short story. Perfect example of novels is J.K. Rowling's series of, Harry Potter and the entire book. We have short stories. Um, I think some of these you can find some of these on other books and short and long movies. Marvel is a very good storyteller, and DC also both of them as an example of of long movies, and they are also series. We have feature films, we have skits. I mean, you've seen some skits on Instagram mostly. You must have seen plenty of them. There is a storyline to that, and somebody, there is a writer behind those acting, right? It's not, you don't just wake up and start acting. There is a script that you have to follow, a script that tells you the expression that has to be on your face, the way your leg has to be positioned, the way your clothes has to look, that kind of thing. That is still creative writing. Some other outputs are ad videos, YouTube videos. Every successful YouTube video, well, 90% of successful YouTube videos have a script, whether it's a direct, like verbatim script, or some kind of slide like this one that you follow to guide your presentation. So any which way, whichever way, these are some of the outputs of creative and script writing. All right, so the tips for creative writing: be open to inspiration. Every little thing counts. So when they come, write them down. I say this to you as a creative writer. I started as a creative writer. In fact, my first story is still somewhere tucked in my room because I so much love what I did. It's not something I have intention of publishing or putting out in the world, but I love what I created as my first output. And it's a very weird story, and we're not going to get into that. The point is, be open to inspiration. If you have plans to be a novelist, for instance, you cannot be selective in the things that you think about. You cannot be selective in the kinds of conversations you have. You cannot be selective in the places you go, right? You need to be open-minded to a certain extent because you never know where you're going to get ideas from. You could just be walking on the road, see a strange flower and think, wow, think something weird, and you can still ask yourself, where did that come from? At that point, it's a very good time to write. Just document. It might be useless, completely rubbish, but you don't decide at that point. You just have to write it down, and when the situation or the opportunity presents itself, you decide if it's useful or if you're supposed to discard it and move on with your life. The next tip is be attentive to details when developing your characters and scenes. Now, there is something called okay, let's not go into technicals. Regardless of the output, the final output of your content, you have to be attentive to details. Like I said earlier about skit, somebody tells them the expression on their face, what the expression on their face should look like. Somebody tells them what to wear. Somebody tells them how to walk. Someone tells them when to start dancing. And when I say start dancing, I'm thinking of um Chris Clown right now. But anyway, the point is you need to be very attentive to details. You need to pay attention if you're writing a story that is reflecting the American community or the um Japanese community. You need to pay attention to the kind of hair you give them, their skin colors, their intonation, the quirks that each character has. You don't want to misplace things, which is why I mentioned earlier that creative writing can be one of the toughest kind of writing. You need to every little thing in your character, in your setting, in the scenes that you create, in the words that you choose to use. Every little thing is important. So you need to be very attentive to your choice of words, your choice of arrangement when you're doing creative writing. Number three, show, don't tell. That's a very common what's it called? A very common tip, right? And tip, show, don't tell. Don't tell. You don't tell stories. You show. Don't say, don't just say he cried. Say he bawled his eyes out. Let us understand just how much did he cry? How painful was the situation? How did it affect him? So we don't just want to know that he cried. We want to know how he cried. So focus on showing and not telling. Next, identify your voice and own it. Voice is it's in fact an entirely different topic on its own. You can choose to be sarcastic, you can choose to be humorous, you can choose to be happy, you can choose to be cranky. There are so many voices you can take with your creative writing. Whatever it is, let it shine. Don't don't repress it. Don't make it seem like somebody told you tragedies don't sell, so you don't want to appear sad in your book. If you want to be sad, let it be sad. Let people cry. Let people feel that sadness and cry. Let them cry for your character. Let them cry for that person that you're writing about. Let them feel that pain and let them show it in the way they respond to the content of your writing. So whatever voice you choose to use in your story, own it with your full chest and let it show, let it shine through every word that you use. The next is to read again, read some more. I actually love using this kind of tip because you have to ask yourself after you must have written your first draft, no matter how wacky it is, would I pay for this? And answer honestly, would you pay for this? If you won't pay for it, then something is wrong. Something is very, very wrong with your storyline or with the content or with the choice of words. So you need to read. Keep reading. Keep reading. The more you read, the more you can identify with your story and the more you can pick out gaps and tell yourself this doesn't fit here. Delete it completely or rephrase it. Then the next is look for communities and participate in writing workshops and challenges. As a creative, I'm repeating that you need to understand the power of having people, similar people around you. If they don't motivate you, they will oppress you. But regardless of what they do, you need them around you. You need them in your network. You need them to remind you that you are a creative because believe me, it's very easy to forget sometimes who you are as a creative because life gets in the way and it's just very easy to forget. So you need communities to active communities, not communities that just exist and they are like maybe weeks, months, nothing happens there. That's not a community, that's a dead house. So you need communities that remind you of your job, the role that you're trying to play as a creative and finds a way to push you to grow, to become better with workshops, challenges, learning materials, resources, anything like that. Just put yourself in those communities and don't just be there and be silent. Be there and be heard. Let people know that you're here. Nobody's asking you to be loud and obnoxious, but Be there, be present, let them know that somebody joined this community. This is what this person does. This is how this person writes. Let them know who you are. Then the next is write. It's an obvious tip, but somehow some people still forget, myself included. If you don't write, you're not a writer. If you've never written a story, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you're not a creative writer. If you cannot boast of, if you cannot relate, if you listen to, okay, maybe you're listening to a TED Talk right now of a creative writer, and the speaker makes a joke and you cannot relate at all to that joke, my dear, you are not a writer. Something is wrong. So you need to write. When you write, you're definitely going to when you write, you're going to research. When you write, you're going to find something because you cannot just be writing from your head. How old are you? How much have you gone through? No matter how much you've gone through, you still have to ask questions, make research, listen to people so that you can actually write something that matters. So please write. The next is to edit your previously abandoned work. This is gold. Oops, sorry. This is gold. You know why? Because as we grow, we evolve, our choices evolve, our styles also evolve. So when you go back to something that you wrote maybe a year, okay, when I go back to what I wrote when I was still in my secondary school, high school, if I sit down, edit it, there's a very high chance that I'm going to come up with an entirely different and more magnificent story. That's another way to write. It's not always about starting from scratch. It can just be adjusting what you've done before, improving, moving forward from where you were and trying to become a better person. So that's how creative writing works. And finally, use writing prompts to keep the juices flowing. You're going to get writing prompts if you belong to communities, if you have a network of people that remind you that you are a creative writer. There are always going to be prompts, there are always going to be challenges, write about this, do this. And if you don't even have that, there is Google. Go to Google right now, like right now, pause this video, go to Google and type writing prompts for creative writer. You're going to find thousands of topics and prompts, things that you can write about just to keep the juices flowing. So those are the tips that I have for you, and we're going to pause this video now, take a little break, and then in the next video, I'm going to tell you the process, the writing process, and then show you some examples of my own work. See you then.